At 1:55 in the morning, a security camera outside a crowded college bar recorded a 27-year-old medical student named Brian Shaffer. He was standing near the entrance. He spoke briefly with two women. Then he turned toward the bar and moved out of the camera's view. That was the last confirmed image of Brian Shaffer. By sunrise, he had not come home. By Monday, he had missed a flight to Miami. And in the 20 years since that night, no confirmed trace has explained what happened after he stepped away from that camera. This is often described as the case of a man who walked into a bar and never came out. But that phrase is not quite true. The camera did not see every possible route through the building. There was an area under construction nearby. A service route may have been accessible. So the mystery is not whether Brian vanished by magic. The mystery is far more unsettling. Where did he go after he left the frame? And why has no one been able to prove it? Brian Randall Shaffer was 27 years old. He was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. He also played guitar. His life seemed to be moving forward. He was studying for exams. He had plans for spring break. He was preparing to travel to Miami with his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner. But the weeks before his disappearance had been painful. Brian's mother, Renee, had died from cancer only 3 weeks earlier. For anyone, that kind of loss can change the feeling of an ordinary day. Still, people close to Brian said he was looking ahead. He had school. He had friends. He had a trip waiting for him. On the evening of March 31st, 2006, the start of spring break, Brian had dinner with his father. Later, he went out with friends near the Ohio State campus. It was supposed to be a normal Friday night. Nothing about it suggested that it would become the final night anyone could account for. Brian and his friends spent the night at several bars near campus. Later, in the early hours of April 1st, they returned to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a popular second-floor bar in a shopping complex on North High Street. Security video recorded Brian and his friends entering the building and going up an escalator. Inside, the bar was busy. Music was playing. People were drinking. Conversations overlapped in every direction. At some point, Brian became separated from the friends he had arrived with. Just before the bar closed, surveillance video recorded him outside the entrance. He was talking with two women he had met that night. The exchange appeared casual. There was no public indication of an argument, no visible panic, no obvious sign that something was wrong. Then, at about 1:55 a.m., Brian turned back toward the entrance. He stepped out of the camera's view. That short moment became the center of the entire case. The image looks ordinary, because it is ordinary. There's no dramatic final gesture, no visible struggle, no signal that this would be the last time Brian would be seen. Just a man near a doorway, in the last minutes of a crowded night. When the bar closed around 2 a.m., Brian was not with his friends. They tried to find him. They tried calling him, but he was gone. At first, they believed he may have left on his own. That is a normal assumption after a night out. A friend gets separated. A phone is not answered. Everyone thinks the person has already gone home. But Brian didn't go home. He did not return to his apartment. And the hours that followed would turn a missed connection into a missing person investigation. The next day, calls to Brian's phone went straight to voicemail. His girlfriend became worried. Brian's father had not heard from him either. When his apartment was checked, his car was still there. His home showed no clear sign that he had packed for a sudden departure. Then came the moment that made the situation impossible to dismiss. On April 3rd, Brian failed to appear for his planned flight to Miami. He had been looking forward to that trip. Now, he was not answering calls. He was not at home. He was not at the airport. And the last known location in the timeline was still the same crowded bar near campus, the place where, only hours earlier, he had been surrounded by people. Investigators began with the most obvious question. Had Brian left through the entrance where the surveillance camera was located? The footage showed him arriving earlier in the night. It showed him near the entrance shortly before closing. But it did not show him leaving through that public route. For investigators, that was a starting point, not an ending. Security video can document what it sees. It cannot explain what happens outside its frame. The Ugly Tuna was inside a building with other areas and a construction zone nearby. Authorities considered the possibility that Brian could have left through a service area connected to the construction site. It was not an easy route, but it was a possible one. Searchers checked the area around the bar. They looked into nearby dumpsters. They searched around the construction site. They checked the nearby Olentangy River area. Hospitals and other locations were checked. Friends, staff, and people who had been at the bar were interviewed. The women seen speaking with Brian on the surveillance video were interviewed. So were people connected to the venue. But no interview produced a confirmed answer. No verified sighting established where Brian went after the bar. No publicly known evidence has explained what happened in the minutes after he left the camera's view. Years passed. The case did not close. In 2021, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the Columbus Division of Police released an age-progressed image of Brian. The image did not claim to solve the case. It was a reminder that investigators still wanted information. A reminder that, officially, Brian Shaffer was still missing. Over time, the unanswered gap created theories. One possibility is that Brian left through the service route and suffered an accident after leaving the building. Another is that he encountered someone after he was no longer visible on camera. A third possibility is that he intentionally disappeared. Each theory begins with the same problem. Each one has to explain the silence that followed. No clear route home, no confirmed sighting, no explanation that fits every known detail. And none of them has been proven. There is no confirmed account of Brian leaving by the service route. There is no confirmed evidence that he was harmed inside the bar. There is no confirmed proof that he started a new life somewhere else. And there is no reason to turn uncertainty into accusation. The people around Brian that night were interviewed. The video has been analyzed for years. The case has attracted rumors, internet speculation, and dramatic claims. But the facts remain smaller, colder, and more difficult. Brian was last known to be at a bar near Ohio State University. At about 1:55 a.m., he moved out of the camera's view. After that, the verified timeline ends. The Brian Shaffer case is not a locked room mystery. It is not proof that someone can disappear from a place with no exits. It is the story of one missing piece of time. A few minutes after a crowded bar began to close. A few minutes that should have led to a ride home, an apartment door, a phone call, a flight to Miami. Instead, they led nowhere. Somewhere between the noise of the bar and the quiet of the morning, Brian's trail disappeared. The FBI still lists Brian Shaffer as missing. His case remains open in the public record. And after 20 years, the central question has not changed. What happened after Brian Shaffer stepped out of frame?